How's it going, everyone? It's me, Liam, aka Mr. Knight, aka Dystopia Junkie, and I'm making this video because something really cool has happened recently here on YouTube. I hit the 5,000 subscriber milestone. I just wanted to start this video by saying a massive thank you to everybody who has subscribed up to now. When I started this channel about 2 years ago, I didn't think I'd hit 5 subscribers, let alone 5,000 of you wonderful people. And so my mind is, to be honest, well and truly blown. I know the last couple of school years have been strange and weird and difficult, and your learning has been compromised or otherwise disrupted. So if I've been able to help any of you out, which, judging by some of the recent comments I've got, is the case, that makes the hours and hours that I put into making all of these videos completely worth it. I know loads of you have got exams at the moment or your GCSE equivalents, so I just wanted to say a massive good luck from me. I'm sure you will absolutely smash it. Now, when I hit 5,000 subscribers, I decided to celebrate in typical YouTuber fashion. And decided to host a quick Q&A. Over on Instagram, I let you lot ask me a bunch of questions about GCSE English, my PhD, my time as a teacher, or just about me more generally. And so this video sees me finally getting round to answering those questions. Thanks for waiting. If you didn't manage to ask a question at the time, then if you have one still, please feel free to throw it down in the comments section and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Okay, so I'm going to be reading through your questions now and hopefully answering them adequately. I'm reading off my phone, so apologies for doing this quite a bit in the video. So, the first question comes from Ali, who says, "Congrats, dude." Cheers, Ali. "What videos are you working on at the moment?" So, at the moment I'm obviously working on this video, but I'm also working on my Romeo and Juliet series. There should be another video coming out the same weekend as this video goes up, probably the day before, and hopefully then another Romeo and Juliet video coming out the next weekend, so the weekend after this video goes up. Probably think I've got another 20 or 25 Romeo and Juliet videos to make, which will probably see me through to the beginning of the next school year, maybe a little bit longer, and maybe a few more videos Romeo and Juliet added into that. After that, I'll move on to my next, probably Shakespeare, probably Macbeth. I'll let sort of you lot help me decide that closer at the time. Also, I've got some sort of ideas I've had for a while to do some more stuff to do with dystopias and my research, but I haven't sort of properly started working on those just yet. A similar question came from Murray here on YouTube, who asked, "Would you consider posting A-level English literature videos on different texts?" Now, would I consider it? Of course I would. I would definitely think about doing A-level texts at some point in the future. However, as maybe I hinted at just then in the previous question, I've got a lot of GCSE texts that I would like to focus on first, purely because I know them a lot better, I'm way more familiar with the GCSE spec, and also I kind of feel like, I've started something here with GCSE, and I'd like to certainly get a decent way through GCSE set texts before I move on to A-level. So yes, I would consider it, not necessarily right now or in the immediate future, but something that certainly one day I'd probably like to give a go, yeah. Molly asked, "What did you do for A-level English?" So I did A-level English literature for both years I was at college, and then actually in my second year at college I decided to pick up the first half, so like the AS, back when AS levels were more a thing. I did A-level English language as well, because I thought doing that would make me a better, more rounded English student, because at that point I knew that I was wanting to go to university to study English. In terms of what text did I do in English Lit, I'm gonna probably forget some, because this was like 9-10 years ago now. But I remember doing The Great Gatsby in my first year, and I actually really hated it. I did this book called Digging to America as well, which didn't really give me a particularly good feeling either. I didn't really like it that much. The Rime of the Ancient Mariner was in there, I'm sure. Probably a poetry anthology at some point, but that might have been the A2 year, I'm not completely sure. Merchant of Venice was definitely in my first year, in the AS year. Loved Merchant of Venice, brilliant. Shylock is such a fantastic character. Moving into the second year, I remember doing Blue Remembered Hills by Dennis Potter, brilliant play. Sort of the TV film adaptation of it is fantastic, featuring like an all-adult cast, but they're playing like really young children. It's got this like really strange, eerie air to it because of that. We also did another Shakespeare, I think it was As You Like It, kind of paired quite nicely with Blue Remembered Hills because we were focusing on like the pastoral, like the countryside, the rural, things like that was like one of our themes. And then also then we did coursework in the A2 year, I'm pretty sure it was the A2 year, and that's where I actually got my first taste of dystopian literature. That's where I first read 1984, and I think Brave New World as well. I had to write like a comparative essay, and those are the two texts that I chose. And so obviously, if it wasn't for doing A-level English Lit and doing that piece of coursework and picking those two texts, well, I wouldn't be Dystopia Junkie, but I wouldn't be where I got to today. So yeah, I think that's pretty much everything. I've probably forgotten something, but you know, it was like 9-10 years ago now. I'm an old man, you know, memory's getting pretty shaky these days. Tia asks, are you thinking about merch? If so, what designs or items would you make? Now, am I thinking about it? Yeah, I mean, I know a few of you have been asking me about it for a while now, about, are you going to make some merch? Would you really like to get some merch? That sort of thing. At this point, I'm not entirely sure what I would make, or indeed what I would like put on it, only because I don't think you lot really want to walk around with like bright yellow t-shirts with my stupid face on them. I'm fairly sure of that. Additionally, I would need to talk to my my artist Charlie. A link for Charlie's website is in pretty much every video description that I make. I would need to talk to Charlie first as well, because he did the art for me as kind of like a favour for a mate. He's an old school friend of mine. So I'd need to talk to him as well about like making money off of that, because I feel that's a bit sort of shady of me. Or I might need to commission him to make some new art, maybe some updated art. I don't know. Charlie, if you're watching this, get in touch, because I've been meaning to for a while. In terms of like products or what I'd make thinking of merch, like I said, the idea of kind of like clothing merch I think it's a bit strange. I had this idea a while back to make face masks with my little logo on it, but again, I think that would have been really strange. What I do think might be useful though is maybe more like stationery, only because I know I say in most videos like make sure you've got a pen and paper to hand and that sort of thing, to make notes of the things that I say in videos. And so maybe if I can have like Dystopia Junkie branded notebooks or branded pens or whatever, maybe that's more the sort of thing that I would feel comfortable making, or feel would be more suitable to kind of what the channel is. The channel's an education channel, right, rather than me as a celebrity vlogger, whatever personality. So yeah, maybe like stationery rather than items of clothing. Although like a snapback with my face on it I think would be funny, so maybe that as well, I don't know. If any of you have ideas about what sort of, if you'd like to see merch first of all, and what sort of merch you'd like to see, then please do like chuck them down in the comments section, send me a message on Instagram or Twitter or whatever. Just let me know, because certainly I think I need some advice and some input here from you lot. Tia also asks, favourite poem from the Edutuber anthology? Hands down, easily Ozymandias. It's short, which means it's easy to remember, or easier to remember. I think the images are really vivid and really strong. I think the language is really nice as well. Also, it has kind of like a special place in my heart, if you like, because of how I first taught it and the memories I have with that class when I first taught it. So my first GCSE class, we were doing the poetry anthology. I knew we had Ozymandias, and I knew I wanted to do like a big dramatic reading for them to make it just a bit more engaging and to help them sort of buy into the poem and to buy into poetry a bit more. And so when I was like setting up for the lesson, I made sure that I pulled a chair out by the table, like right by my desk. And as I was reading the poem, I got to Ozymandias' lines, when he's like, his lines inscribed on the pedestal, my name is Ozymandias, King of Kings, etc. as I got to those lines, I stood up on the chair and then onto the table as well and did those big, like, authoritative, like, bombastic, arrogant lines from Ozymandias himself. And that was like in year 10 for my GCSE class. And I remember at the time they're like, "Oh my God, sir," you know, like they were like, they lost their minds, you know, they thought it was like such a, I don't know, a moment, whether it was strange or cool, I don't know. But then even going into like year 11 and certainly like revising for their exams in year 11, they remembered Ozymandias really well. And I'm not going to say like that is just down to the simple act of me standing up on a chair, or on a table as well. But I think that helped to keep that poem sort of cemented in their mind. I know that they, like in year 11, they're like, "Oh, sir, remember when you stood on the table?" Oh, like it was a good memory for our class, and it's a memory that I've kept. So Ozymandias, easy peasy, great poem. So McNuggety, which is a brilliant name, asks, "Why did you choose to start a YouTube channel?" And there are sort of a few different reasons, if you like, or a few reasons why I kept doing YouTube. So first of all, I actually set up a YouTube channel before my first year 11s had their exams, because I wanted to make some content for them to help them revise, to help them succeed in their English exams. I knew that time was quite short, and so I thought our time in class was quite short. So if I did like the extra work to make stuff that they could then access outside of school hours, you know, at home when they're revising, whenever it is that they are revising, I thought I'd do that just to give them that final sort of push, that final bit of help to hopefully help them get those grades. Now, I initially wanted it to go just to them, but obviously they spread to their classmates, or not their classmates, to their schoolmates, their, you know, people in their year. And so from there it did start to spread a little bit, and you know, it gained a bit of momentum, a bit of traction. Those videos that I first made are no longer visible on YouTube for various reasons, but when I left teaching, I wanted to still be able to help people. I recognised that I had learned the GCSE spec quite well in my time as a teacher, and that going away and doing a PhD for 3-4 years, I didn't want that knowledge to fizzle out and die in my brain. So YouTube was first and foremost a good way for me to make positive use of that knowledge that I'd accrued. It keeps me on my toes and keeps me fresh when it comes to teaching, or fresher than I otherwise would be, and it allows me to help more and more people. Another reason why I continued with YouTube was that I wanted to do more vlogging, actually, to do with my PhD, which ultimately I haven't done too much of. Now, the reason why I wanted to do PhD vlogs was because when you tell people you're doing a PhD, especially in a PhD like in a subject like English, so you know, like I am, people don't really understand what that means. Do you go to lectures? Do you go to seminars as you would do at other stages in your university sort of career? Do you go to the library all day? Do you just sit and read? Do you think? Do you write? What do you actually do? So I wanted to try to just create a bit more awareness of what doing a PhD in English literature was, and help to maybe clear up any misconceptions, or some misconceptions that people might have. Part of that as well was because I wanted to be able to show my students what you can achieve at like the very pinnacle of academic achievement. You know, what and where your educational journey can take you. And I wanted that to be aspiration. I wanted that to motivate and inspire the young people that I worked with, and young people now, I guess, across the country and even the world. I come from quite a rural area where, on the whole, like aspirations, academic aspirations at least, aren't necessarily always very high. And I wanted to try to challenge that culture, challenge that mindset, and show young people what they can achieve, you know, if they put the work in. So that was part of it as well. Another part as well was that I was really inspired by another YouTuber, another, at the time, PhD vlogger called Simon Clark. Now, Simon is an absolutely phenomenal YouTuber. He used to do some brilliant PhD vlogs when he did his PhD in atmospheric physics at the University of Exeter, and he's now like a full-time YouTuber who makes like science content. And I saw what he was doing in the videos he was making and how sort of eye-opening and inspiring they were. I wanted to try to replicate that, but in an arts and humanities sense, because STEM subjects and arts and humanities subjects, they are obviously different in a number of ways. So I wanted to try to maybe fill a niche there as well. As I've said, that I haven't done loads of, primarily because my day-to-day often involves me sitting at a desk, reading, thinking, writing, especially during a pandemic, and so they're just not overly interesting videos, basically. Hopefully, as things maybe start to get better, I might be able to produce more interesting videos because my day-to-day life will be much more interesting, but until that point, the PhD vlogs are probably still going to be very rare and few and far between. So, McNuggety, to sort of summarise that, I wanted to help people, I wanted to raise aspirations, I wanted to clear misconceptions, and I guess just inspire people, which I think I already said, I'm not entirely sure. Norsatar asks, how long is a PhD? Now that does vary from country to country, because I know, for instance, America has a very different PhD process to what we have here in the UK. I'm going to speak about the UK experience because it's the one I'm most familiar with, because I'm going through it myself. I'm currently 18 months into my PhD, so a year and a half, and a PhD in the UK typically lasts, if you do it like full time and you don't take any like breaks or leave of absences, typically takes between 3 to 4 years. Those 3 years are kind of like where you do, in theory, most of the research, most of the idea gathering, most of the thinking. You can, if you get all your writing done in that point, submit at the end of 3 years, but that 4th year is there as an option for you to finish up, basically, for you to get all your ideas, all your writing together, complete, finished, etc. So that's how long a PhD in the UK takes, full time, typically. I'm 18 months in, so I've got somewhere between 18 and 30 months left to go. Leighton asks, books or movies? And Leighton, I'm probably going to surprise you here. These days, at the moment, I would actually say movies. Only because all day, during like the working day, I am reading books, reading novels, reading non-fiction books, reading journal articles, reading. And I'm reading a lot. Or I'm writing a lot. Or I'm thinking about what I've read or written. So I spend a lot of my day with words and with books. And so if I'm choosing to unwind, which I think is what your question was asking really, Leighton, if I'm choosing to unwind or choosing to just like chill out, I'd rather watch a movie, because reading a book would feel like work, or if it doesn't feel like work, I'd probably still be like in like super analytical mode, and so I wouldn't be switching off. Or I would, if I wasn't doing that but I was still reading, I would probably feel guilty for not reading something that's directly related to the PhD. So that's why I tend to not read in my free time, in my downtime anymore. However, if you were to ask me like books or movies or YouTube, I'd probably say YouTube over movies, just because I don't know, I find like scrolling through Netflix is just too much and I don't know where to start. Say like Amazon Prime or whatever. Whereas YouTube, like, smaller videos, sort of often sillier, often sort of a bit more engaging from like, it's, I don't know, I like watching videos where people talk about stuff, or, like Let's Plays, or just things where like people are there talking whilst doing something as well. I prefer that kind of content if I'm like just unwinding and being mindless for a bit. So books or movies, if I'm relaxing, movies. Obviously I love reading, and I assume one day post PhD I'd say yes, reading totally 100% of the time, because I do prefer books to movies, hence why I'm doing like English Lit rather than film studies. But to unwind at the moment, out of those two choices, movies, but still probably I'd just rather watch YouTube, to be honest. Rihanna asks, favourite tutor group? Now Rihanna, I knew you'd ask this sort of question, and I'm going to disappoint you and give you a total cop-out answer and say that I can't choose. And that is the truth. The reason why is, at my time as a teacher, I had 2 tutor groups mostly. I had one tutor group one year when they were in year 10. I took them through into year 11 for a little bit, and then sort of a few weeks into their year 11, I took over a year 10 tutor group. So that first tutor group I was covering for a colleague who I cherished dearly, and then she came back and she was able to take them over again. And then the second tutor group, they had a tutor who left quite early in the school year, and so I replaced that tutor. The first tutor group I had at the school I worked at, I worked with them in my NQT year, so like my first year as a proper teacher, if you like, out of training. And I feel like I learnt a lot from them as both a teacher and a tutor, but also as kind of like, sounds cheesy, but like as a man. I learned what it meant to be responsible for, lots of people, and how to look after them and care for them and do what I could to make their lives easier, better, and so on. And certainly when I stopped being their tutor, I was very sad, because I grew to care about them very, very deeply. The second tutor group that I worked with, things were very different. I was a bit more established within the school and a bit more established as a teacher and tutor and whatnot. And I think it's fair to say, and they would probably admit it themselves, as a tutor group, they didn't have much in the way of unity. They were quite, they weren't like a family. They weren't a community. They weren't unified. And that's what I really focused on in my time with them, is sort of bringing them together and trying to create a bit more of a community atmosphere in the tutor group. And certainly we did have our ups and downs, but we had so many ups and so many wonderful happy moments and so many silly jokes. And every Monday I'd buy breakfast for them. I'd go to Tesco in the morning and buy like cereal bars and cartons of juice and croissants and whatever. And certainly I grew to become incredibly fond of that tutor group. And I miss both my tutor groups incredibly, and I hope that any of them that are watching this, I hope you're all okay, and I hope you've all gone on to college now and your lives are very different and the pandemic's been messy, but I hope you are all, as much as you can be, I hope you're all safe and happy and well. When I had to leave the second tutor group because I was leaving teaching to start my PhD, that was like one of the saddest moments, I think, of my professional career, if not my life. Sort of on those last few days where we knew that things were coming to an end, there was a lot of tears. I remember in like the final assembly that we had together, and I was there at the front, sort of, Mr. Knight, please come to the front of the assembly, or tutor group for prepare something for you, that sort of thing. And I bawled my eyes out. I don't care. I'm a man who cries, and I cried publicly and openly, and that's fine. And that's testament to how much that tutor group meant and continues to mean to me. What I will say, Rihanna, and this might sort of maybe make you feel a bit better about my answer here, I have 2 main regrets about my time teaching, or 2 main regrets about leaving teaching when I did. And the first regret is that I didn't get to see that second tutor group through to the end of year 11. Obviously, their year 11 was the year 11 that coincided with the start of the pandemic, so it was a messy and strange and confusing time for everybody. But also I'm aware that the support that they ended up having once I left was, we'll say, inconsistent, to be fair. It varied, and I do feel responsible for that, because if I didn't leave, then it would have been me who was there looking after them. And so I still feel to this day, I know a lot of my friends know this about me, I still feel very guilty about that, very guilty about leaving that group of learners, that tutor group, when I did, when actually maybe they really did need me to stick around for another year. In addition to that, and it kind of follows as well, one of my regrets about teaching is that I never had a tutor group that had my teacher initials. So my initials were like LN, I think, because there was already another LK at the school. I never had a tutor group that was whatever LN, because of sort of taking over tutor groups midway through years or covering for other colleagues and so on. And I know that if I had stayed with my tutor group into year 11, they would have been 11 LN, they would have had my name with them. And I know it's a really minor thing, but almost because the tutor group like tutor groups I worked with never had my initials with them, that to me just, there's a sense of like incompleteness there. Like I never had a tutor group that was truly properly mine. So yeah, those are two of my biggest regrets about leaving teaching when I did, and it is about that tutor group and me as a tutor. So I loved and continue to love and cherish dearly both the tutor groups I had. I do though feel guilty about leaving the second tutor group when I did, and if I could like go back in time and like clone myself or whatever, or split myself in two, you know, there would be a version of me that still went and did the PhD, because I don't regret doing the PhD, but there would be like the second version of me who would have stayed as a teacher, being in my tutor group's tutor and supporting them in a very difficult year. That's what, you know, I know I can't do that, but if I could, I would. Harry asks, and honestly I could have put money on Harry asking this question, do you miss us? Harry, I miss every single class that I worked with, every single young person that I helped with their education in some way, because I miss teaching, to be honest. As a teacher, for those of you that never had me, probably most of you, I was, yes, sort of serious and stern when it came to like doing the work, because that's what you're there to do when you're in school, right? You're there to learn. But if I could alongside that still have a joke, be silly, brighten up people's day, I would certainly try to do that as well. So for me, teaching, you know, and being a teacher, as much as it was of course about learning and the education and the English, a big part of it for me as well was about the laughter, the humour, the banter. I miss coming into school each and every day and, you know, having kids in the corridor say, hi sir, cheers sir, you know, see you later sir, anything like that. Miss that. I miss the in-jokes that I had with various classes. You know, I had I don't know, I count down 3, 2, 1, but sometimes I do it in Spanish. Why? Don't know. Or I would, you know, we're doing poetry or whatever, and there'd be like a big question, what is love? And obviously I'd always sing that question. I'd have half the class saying, baby don't hurt me no more. And then the other half of the class might say, what is love, 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 or whatever. I don't really know I want that though. I prefer the first one. I prefer all the silly in-jokes, all the humour. I miss being like the all singing, all dancing monkey at the front of the classroom that would also still, you know, somehow manage to teach people English and help them succeed and progress. I miss seeing that light bulb moment when a student has been trying to understand something for ages. Maybe it's trying to understand how to use a specific term, or understand how and why a certain effect has been created, or even understand how to like structure an essay effectively. I miss seeing that light bulb moment when they finally get it. And when you then see them go like, light bulb moment, and then pen in hand, they get to work and they start writing something fantastic where they are genuinely progressing and developing their knowledge. So yes, Harry, I do miss it. You know, there were plenty of ups and downs for me when I was a teacher. I worked a lot, and at times to like the detriment of my health, to be honest. And if I were to go back to teaching, I would need to like think about that and really be mindful of that. But to know like that you make a difference on someone's life, either because you've taught them and you've taught them really well, and that helps them in like their education or futures or their future careers or whatever, that is really meaningful and really powerful. But also knowing like that you've made a difference to their life by being there for them, by helping them through, you know, friendship issues or stuff going on at home, or just like the various crises that we go through in our teenage years. I miss that, and I know like how powerful and meaningful that is, to be that person, to be that support network for someone. I miss the jokes, I miss the banter, I miss having students just say thanks, so that's a great lesson. So do I miss my students? I know that's kind of more about like, do I miss teaching, but all of that comes down to the students, to the young people I worked with. Do I miss my students? Of course I do, terribly. And it's really strange for me to think like so many of the young people I worked with now have left secondary school, they're at college or sixth form or, you know, apprenticeships or whatever it is that they're doing now. And I just sincerely hope, and I genuinely mean this, I just hope you're all okay. You know, it's been a mad couple of years, and I just hope that, as I said earlier, like you're happy, you're healthy, you're safe, and as much as you can be right now, that you are doing interesting things with your lives, that you are engaged and happy and interested, and you're just doing all right. I hope you're doing okay. So Shahana asks, what made you want to become an English teacher? Now, if we break down what it means to be an English teacher, there's two main things for it really in my view. The first is like the English viewpoint, you know, the subject. And the second is being a teacher, which really means imparting knowledge, of course, but working with young people. So, English. I love English. You know, I've got 2 degrees in English, and I'm, you know, working towards a third, right? I've got my undergrad, which is English with creative writing, and my master's, which is in creative writing, both of which I completed at the University of Nottingham, and now I'm working on a PhD in English Lit here at the University of Birmingham. I just love books, I love words, I love ideas, I love deep concepts, I love analysis and critical thinking. I love being able to chat with people about a book and what characters have done and why they've done it and why the writers made them do that, and you know, the effects that the writers achieved through their use of language and techniques and things like that. I genuinely love it. I know it sounds so nerdy, but it's the truth. Secondly, the second aspect from being an English teacher, working with young people. Young people are hilarious. Sometimes intentionally, sometimes not so intentionally. For me, humour and laughter is like one of the most important things in the world, and I think something that gives me great joy in life and gives me a lot of energy. And I don't know, if I had a life where there's like no laughter, no humour, no silliness, I think it wouldn't be really a life worth living in my eyes. And so knowing that I could work with young people who are hilarious and work with them specifically with regards to English, which I love, those two things just match up perfectly. Furthermore, I had some brilliant teachers, and brilliant English teachers in particular, when I was a young person myself. In particular, they probably won't see this, what might, I don't know. In particular, John Rolls, who was one of my English teachers he was my English teacher in year 9 and year 10, I think. And then Lizzie Friendship, who was my English teacher for parts of year 10 and also for all of year 11. They were so comforting and supportive and encouraging, and they just pushed me to always succeed and achieve more and more and more. They opened my eyes to how beautiful and magnificent the written and spoken words can be. And I knew that, you know, they helped me through various stuff when I was a young person, and even like just by being there and just by sort of chatting with me. And I wanted to be able to give that back. I wanted to be that person for another student. You know, if in my time as a teacher I had the impact on one learner's life that Mr. Rolls and Miss Friendship had on my life, then you know what? I'd say I'm pretty satisfied with that. If because of me and what I've done, that a young person really loves English, or you know, wants to go and write a novel, or wants to, I I don't know, go to college and university to study English and be exposed to all the wonderful sort of varieties of literature and poetry and drama and theatre and performance that are out there, and have some fantastic, brilliant experiences like I'd have through my times at university, that's made it all worth it. That was why I became an English teacher, to, yes, talk about English all day because I love English, to work with young people because they're hilarious, but if I have had that impact, that tiny influence maybe even, on just doing one thing that's helped to improve a young person's life and like their future, that for me was also a huge, massive reason as to why I went and was an English teacher for a bit. Will asks, what are your plans after you have finished your PhD? New head of English at, and then the name of the school that I worked at. Now this is a similar question to Rory's, which is, what are your plans for the future? So chaps, if you don't mind, I'm going to tackle your questions at the same time. What do I want to do in the future post-PhD? I don't know. There's lots of options available to me at the moment. Obviously, doing a PhD, becoming Dr. Liam Knight, hopefully one day, that would enable me to work in and teach at universities. So, being a professor and continuing to research and to work with undergraduates and master's students and, one day, like future PhD students on various elements of English literature, quite like high level, quite like difficult concepts as well, or specific genres or whatever. I could, in theory, if I had to follow that path, sort of teach even more specifically on dystopian literature, which I absolutely adore. However, the last sort of couple years have shown me that academia, so working for universities, being a teacher at a university or a lecturer, professor, etc., academia is not necessarily a great place to work, because academia, to start with, is very precarious and doesn't really give you much in the way of job security or financial security. Doing a PhD or becoming like a university professor is not as straightforward as doing a PGCE, so like a teaching qualification, and then after that going and becoming a teacher. When I did my PGCE in Nottingham, I interviewed for like a job in Nottingham, didn't get it, and then like a week later interviewed for the job at the school I went to teach at, the school that I used to go to as a student myself back in Devon. And I got the job, and the job itself was a full-time job, and it was a permanent job, like straight away. And so I was quite secure from a career viewpoint from there, unless like I got sacked or whatever, which obviously wasn't going to happen. When you do a PhD and you become a doctor of your subject, so I'll become a doctor of English literature at the end of it, you don't easily fall into a secure full-time job straight away. What tends to happen is that you have to do like a 6-month job teaching maybe 1 or 2 classes, so like a part-time contract essentially, at one university. We'll do some random examples here. Say Falmouth in Cornwall. So you might spend 6 months in Falmouth. When those 6 months end, you may not have a job at the end of it, and so you have to find another short-term job elsewhere. So say you then find one in Southampton. So you find a short-term job in Southampton. Say this one's 12 months. And again, you might only have, maybe this time it's 3 classes, 4 classes. You're on a part-time contract, but maybe a slightly longer or beefier part-time contract. So you're working maybe 75% of the time of a full-time contract, that is. Now, to even get those 2 jobs, those 2 like temporary, short-term, part-time jobs, you would have to compete against dozens, if not hundreds, of other candidates. And so the chances of getting those are actually quite slim. So let's pretend that you are lucky enough to get those 2 short-term, part-time jobs. Say then, after doing that 12 months in Southampton, I think it was, you then find another 6-month job in Glasgow. Then following that, another 12-month job in Manchester. Only after that, after doing several short-term, part-time jobs, might you be lucky enough and successful enough in your application to get a more secure job, So maybe it's not part-time anymore, maybe it's full-time. Maybe it's not short-term, like a year or less. It might be a 2 or 3 year job instead. Only after grinding for years and years and years, and having to move across the country, being paid quite terribly as well, might you be lucky enough to get a full-time, secure job. And by the time that I finish my PhD, I'm going to be like almost 30, and I would need to have a serious think about whether I can gamble my financial security, my job security, for a number of years really, or if I need to kind of do something a bit more safe, basically. So that is one option. Not one I've ruled out completely, but one that I'm aware has its risks. Another option would be, as you sort of say, Will, to go and be a teacher again. As I hope I've made pretty clear throughout this video, I do miss being a teacher, and certainly I have very fond memories of my time as a teacher. I would need to consider sort of work-life balance, because certainly when I was teaching I didn't have much in the way of a life, but that's something that I would, approach as and when I needed to. Whether I'd be like a head of English, I'm not sure really. I know that being a head of department in most schools is a lot of work, and it means that often you do a bit less teaching because you've got to do all the like organisation and management and whatnot. And I don't know at this point if that's something I'd want to do in future. I really like the classroom, but certainly being a teacher again, whether that is back at my old school, back in Devon again, or if it is somewhere here in Birmingham, or actually just anywhere really here in the UK, or maybe even abroad, is certainly an option that I have considered. Another option again that I might do once I finish my PhD and some point in the future, I quite like content creation. Now I'm not going to say I'm going to be a full-time YouTuber, because simply put there isn't enough money in it at the moment for me. I'm no way near making anything like a living. But given how things have gone the last year and year or two, sort of considering where I might be in another year or two, I might be in a position where that could be, not guaranteeing it, but could be a realistic option, maybe. So maybe I just make videos for a while, I don't know. Alternatively again, I've recently been talking to some interesting businesses who, if you keep your eyes peeled on this channel, you'll see the work I'm doing with them soon, I hope. And certainly thinking about like academic publishing and revision guide publishing and sort of revision content production that isn't just videos could be an avenue that I explore, and could be an avenue that I increasingly contribute towards. Certainly I don't think I would want to do anything completely removed from education. Being a university professor, education, being a school teacher, education, working in academic and sort of revision guide material publishing, education. I like learning. I think knowledge is power, and knowledge is really valuable, and so I would certainly want to sort of stay involved somehow in that sort of industry, that sort of sector. But how exactly at this point, I don't know. And that's okay. Thinking historically, like for much of my life, I've often been considering the next step. So when I was doing my GCSEs, I'd have a mind on college. And when I was at college, I'd have a mind on, what do I want to do at university? And then at university, like the first year or so, is sort of, finding your feet and having a laugh and, learning for the sake of learning. But then even then, like second year, third year, you do have to start to think a bit more about like career prospects and next steps and things like that. And I ultimately chose first to do a master's, and then during the master's I chose to train to teach. And what I'm trying to get at is, like, at every step in my life, for almost as far as I can remember, I've had to have part of my mind thinking on the future. And the result of that has been that I've not always like lived in the moment or enjoyed where I'm at that point. I think that's something that I am working on at the moment. I am working on just focusing on the here and now, mostly, and enjoying it. Doing a PhD is such a bizarre and brilliant opportunity. I don't think there really is much else in life like it. I am devoting 3 to 4 years of my life just thinking about ideas and words and books, and that's something that is very difficult to find in a career, certainly to find in such a pure and purely focused way. I think about my PhD most of the time. I do YouTube stuff, and then I try to have a life somewhere, and I think that sort of purity of focus is something that I'm really enjoying at the moment. So I'm just gonna keep on doing it. I mean, I'm 18 months into the PhD. I'm aiming to finish in 24 months' time, I think, or certainly by May 2023. Sounds weird to say it. By April, May 2023, I hope to have finished my PhD, written it all up, and to be preparing for my Viva, or to be having my Viva, or to have had my Viva, and to be officially Dr. Liam Knight. That's kind of like the hope. And so I've got 2 years just to focus on that. And probably in 12 months' time or thereabouts, or maybe even like 6 months' time, I will be thinking a bit more about the future. But for now, it's okay just to be sitting in the present. So sorry chaps, I know it's not like a actual definitive answer, but that's okay. I'm just sort of trying to keep my options open, see what interests me at the time, and keep on keeping on. So yeah. Rich says, doing a PhD, you must use a lot of words, but which one is the best? I don't know. I like various words, and I like them not necessarily because I use them every day or because of their relevance to like my research or anything. My favourite word for years has been maelstrom. Like a really aggressive, like vicious whirlpool. I just like the sounds of it. I don't know, the sounds in the word are just really nice. I quite like it. I like words like tempestuous and tumultuous as well. So all those words, I guess, have like the S sound in common. 2 of them have L's, 3 of them have M's. So maybe it's those sounds that I quite like, the L's, the M's and the S's. Lemurs, not so keen on that, but it has the same sounds. Lemons, same sounds as well. Maelstrom, I'm going to say maelstrom, Rich. You're probably going to take the mick out of me for this, but there you go. Maelstrom. So Kit asks, now you're a big shot YouTuber. Yeah, right. Do you want to hire an audio editor? I know a good one. Now, Kit is my dear friend, and they are indeed the excellent audio editor that they are mentioning. Kit and I have spoken off camera to directly respond to this question. And although I probably won't be hiring an audio editor for my normal videos, there might be a project in future that Kit and I will work together on in future, which I think they're aware of. I've mentioned it briefly in a few messages. However, what I will say is, for any of my followers and subscribers who are queer, I do strongly recommend Kit's podcast, the Bristol 24/7 Queer Catch-Up, which is available on like Spotify and things like that. It's a Bristol-based podcast that discusses lots of issues pertaining to sort of queer communities. And I know that Kit is working incredibly hard on that, and they are doing a fantastic job, and they should be so proud. They've got so many brilliant guests to come on this podcast with them, and I think it's a really fascinating and interesting sort of, and really valuable work that they are doing at the moment. So for any of you who are queer or are part of the LGBTQ+ community or are allies of the community, who are interested in queer related topics, I do strongly recommend listening to Kit's podcast. I'll put something visual on screen now. I'll put a link in the description as well, because you're my friend Kit, and I'll support you in any way I can. But yeah, if any of you find that podcast useful, helpful, etc., be sure to leave feedback and comments that suggest as such, and I'll pass them on to Kit for you. Tom asks, how has doing a PhD changed your views or attitudes to teaching? And Tom, that's a great question, and one that I've had to think really long and hard about. The simple answer, I think, is that doing a PhD has given me so much extra respect for teachers. I think when I was teaching, I was so within the bubble that I didn't necessarily see or recognise what a great job I had. Yes, I worked endlessly, and as I mentioned earlier in the video, to like the detriment of my health at points. And I think because of that, my view was clouded somewhat. But having taken like the sideways step, having left the bubble either entirely or just for a bit, has given me that greater respect for the work that my former colleagues and other teachers across the country and across the world, I guess, are doing. They are people who are working endlessly to ensure that the students in their classes, in their schools and in their school communities are succeeding and are safe and are happy every single day. And I am just in awe of the work that they are doing. I know in particular the last, or say, year and a half or 14 months or whatever have been particularly difficult for teachers here in the UK because of, adapting to lockdown learning and a completely different way of teaching. The complete changes to exams and assessments, and the sort of the lack of communication from exam boards, or the slowness in communicating from exam boards, I'm aware has put a lot of pressure on teachers, and that's not been helped at all by the sort of quite frequent bashing of teachers and educational communities at large, really. So I'm including universities here as well, by the government and by portions of the press. I've seen people who have worked their absolute socks off to ensure that the students in their care have still received a high quality of education, maybe a different kind of education or a different method of making that education accessible. And so it won't be exactly the same, it will be different, but it's still high quality. I've seen them work so hard to do that, and for that to be so blatantly disrespected, I guess, by the government and portions of the press, and even I think part of the public who think like, teachers and university lecturers, they've just had a super long holiday. No, they've been absolutely killing themselves to work and to provide an education for the nation's children and young people. So in short, I know it's a really waffly answer, I just have loads more respect for teachers. I think they are brilliant people. I think they are working so hard, and I think they just deserve greater acknowledgement from society at large, to be honest. Reese asks, what was the most impactful, not favourite per se, piece of literature on your life? Now, the book that has had the most impact on my life is a book that probably is not overly surprising, nor is it actually, the most deep piece of literature in the world. And I'm also aware that me saying this book is somewhat problematic, and I'll cover that in a moment. The book is Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. Now, I know that J.K. Rowling has said a number of unpleasant, discriminatory, hurtful things in recent years. And what I want to say first of all is that in saying Harry Potter and Chamber of Secrets has had this massive impact on my life, I am not in a million years saying that I support or condone any of the hurtful, discriminatory, just awful things that Rowling has said. I do not agree with those views. I do not support them in any way. I strongly believe that we can separate the art from the artist, and in saying that I am saying Harry Potter and Chamber of Secrets for this answer, I'm not saying that I support Rowling's views and agree with them at all, because I don't. The reason why Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets is so important to me is that, simply put, it was the book that instilled that real passion and love of reading in me. I got that book when I was, I think, year 3. So 7 or 8 years old, I think. So how old are you in year 3? 10 and 11 in year 6, 10 and 5, 9 and 4. You turn 8 in year 3, right? I think, here in the UK. That was actually the first Harry Potter book that I bought. or had bought for me. I remember going around the shops, I think with my dad, trying to find the Philosopher's Stone, and we couldn't find it. We couldn't find it anywhere. And I remember that we ended up in Sainsbury's of all places, and Chamber of Secrets was what they had. They didn't have Philosopher's Stone, they had Chamber of Secrets, and so Chamber of Secrets was bought, and I remember going back to my dad's house and reading it. I was a reader before Harry Potter, but I would often read books that were maybe one-offs or standalone, or I would like go to the library and get books, because I couldn't, when I was like little, we didn't really have much money to afford like buying lots of books all the time. And so I remember going like to the library, I think like every Friday or every other Friday with my mum, and I'd pick up some books. I'd often read like the Animorph series. They were also really important to me growing up. But again, like being library books, sometimes like they'd miss some or some would be taken out, and so I wouldn't always be able to read them in the intended order. Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets was like the start of me owning books and owning a series of books. I think there's something really great about book series in that, you know, there's not just one, and so there's lots to go back to. There's lots of books, lots of installments. The story world is really fleshed out and developed, and you follow beloved characters through trials and tribulations and whatnot. Because of Chamber of Secrets, I went back and read Philosopher's Stone. I had it bought for me, I read it, and then subsequently I read, I bought and read, or had bought for me and read, the rest of the Harry Potter books. Through my childhood and adolescence, I read and reread the Harry Potter series. I read other stuff too, so like the Darren Shan books, like both his vampire series and his demons series, the Demon Arthur in particular, I really like. I read like the Amber Spyglass trilogy. I remember reading like the Lemony Snicket books when I was sort of in late primary school. And I really liked those series and they're fantastic, but it was Harry Potter that I read and read and read. I'd go back to it. It was comforting for me. It was reassuring. It was safe. And I think from there, that's where I really found the magic of reading, the beauty of sitting in a quiet room and being immersed with your nose in a book, and really experiencing that story world. I don't think it's actually over the top for me to say if I didn't read Harry Potter as a child, I wouldn't be where I am today, because I didn't have that immense passion for reading before then. I liked reading and I was a frequent reader, but I think having and owning the Potter books was it was a thing that I had fewer restrictions. Basically, I could pick them up and read them whenever I wanted to, and I did. Without that, I may not have developed such a love for English and books and words. I may not have done so well in my GCSEs. I wouldn't have maybe done English at A level. I may not have done English and creative writing at university, and so on. I may not have got to where I have got to today. That's not to say that a different series wouldn't have filled that gap. So maybe the Amber Spyglass series, or Lemony Snicket a few years later, or whatever. Maybe something else would have filled that gap, but I don't know that. And what I do know is that Chamber of Secrets triggered that love for reading for me. And so I have to say it. As problematic as Rowling may be, I have to say it. Chris says, congrats! Thanks, Chris. What is your favourite era of poetry? Now, I'll be honest, I find it difficult to answer this question because growing up, I was not like a big reader of poetry. I like poetry, I like studying poetry, but I wouldn't often go and pick up a poetry collection and read it. I wouldn't say like, oh, I'll go pick up like some romantics and read them, or read Wordsworth, etc. Or, oh, I'm going to go read, some really contemporary modern poetry, and so on. It wasn't something I just did growing up. Even when I was at university and I studied creative writing, right, and I wrote a lot of poetry, I didn't read an awful lot of poetry. And looking back, like my poetry professor, Matt Welton, would often tell us, like, read more poetry. And I didn't. And I hold my hands up. I should have. I'd say my master's year, though, I found a certain group of poets, contemporary poets, that really experimented with and played around with sound and image. One poet in particular called Eric Baus, B-A-U-S. I'll probably put something visual on screen now. His poetry in particular really interested me. It was really bizarre and abstract and almost nonsensical. But what really stood out to me was that the sound patterns used within his poems were really tight and really sophisticated. The images were often quite bizarre but also vivid. He'd often put together like images that you wouldn't expect to see each other. It was almost quite jarring, quite unexpected in that sense. But because of that, it became very surreal and very vivid. And so yeah, his use of sound, his use of image, and within that his use of language as well, of course, just really fascinated me. And I tried to, in my master's year, replicate his style in some of my poems, and to mixed success, to be honest. What I would say though is, when we're thinking about like the poems in like GCSE anthologies, poems that are really tight from a sound perspective, from an image perspective, and have really pleasing language choices, words that sound nice essentially and flow nicely, and it ties into the sound patterns, like the repetition of sounds I find really beautiful. I think there's real music there. Those are the poems that I like. So that can mean if it is, you know, something from Shakespeare, if it does those things, I like it. If it's a really super contemporary poet, so, you know, we'll think about Simon Armitage, if his poems do that, I like it. You know, a less contemporary poet like Seamus Heaney, right, died sort of a few years ago now. I was really sad when he died. If his poem has tight sound patterns, really strong images, really pleasing language choices, I like it. So I'm aware, Chris, total rubbish answer. I don't have a favourite era of poetry. I have favourite types or styles of poetry. And those are ones that are tight phonetically, linguistically, and imagistically. Chris asks, I'm possibly interested in doing English later in life, brackets, only in high school. Is it worth it? Chris, simple answer, and I am probably biased here, is yes. There are so many reasons why. First of all, studying English language or English literature, or both, is going to expose you to so many different texts and different text types. Now, if you are choosing to study later in life, any subject that requires writing, whether that's a different art or humanities subject, so like history, geography, classics, anything that requires maybe words more generally, so you know, philosophy, law, anything like that, having greater exposure to different texts and different text types is going to make you a better writer, which is, to be brutally honest, so essential. You're going to be exposed to greater vocabulary as well, so you're going to be able to better express yourself, simply because you're going to be reading more and more and more through your studies. So that's one reason why. The other reason why, and maybe this is like the bigger reason, is that English literature in particular is your gateway to different experiences and different cultures and different world views. I am a white male, a straight white male, and I have a certain experience of the world because of that. I, however, could read a book and be transported into somebody else's shoes, whether they are different with regards to the historical setting in which they are situated, whether they are different with regards to the country or culture in which they live, whether they are different with regards to their gender or sexual orientation or their preferences in life or the colour of their skin. You can suddenly experience so many different things that you will not be able to access so easily, if at all, in your own day-to-day life. I think because of that, it allows you to understand human beings better. It allows you to understand other people. It makes you not only studying English lit, does that help you to be like more academically intelligent maybe, but I think it helps you to be more emotionally intelligent as well, because you can understand other people and what they are going through maybe that little bit better. It makes you more sympathetic or empathetic and allows you to really connect with other people despite differences that you might have with them. So from that viewpoint as well, I think studying English, in that case more particularly English literature, is something definitely worth doing. Now those two things together, being a better writer, being able to better express yourself generally, and understanding people better, are two broad, soft skills, you might say, that are essential in probably every sort of career going. Yes, not every job is going to require you to analyse a novel. There's very few jobs in the grand scheme that actually do require that. But almost every job, and I'm sure there's probably some that aren't, but almost every job, every career, every sort of, I don't know, way of being in the world requires you to be able to express yourself so that you are understandable to other people. In addition to that, almost every career going in the world requires you to work with other people. Even if you are like self-employed and you work on your own 99% of the time, you're probably going to have like clients or customers. Those are other people, and you need to be able to understand them and work with them as best as possible. If you work for like a big company, you're going to have customers, you're going to have people probably below you in the hierarchy and above you in the hierarchy. If you're in any sort of career that deals with the public and has sort of that real face-to-face interaction with customers, guess what? You're dealing with people. Therefore, what I'm really trying to get at here is, if English helps you to express yourself more effectively and helps you to understand other people more effectively, those are two really big, broad skills that are going to be really vital for pretty much every path in life that you choose to take. So even if you only choose to study English at high school level, which I think is that like A level, I guess, or like up to 18 years old, right? Even if you only go that far, that's still going to give you like a really solid foundation that I think is going to help you in whatever walk of life you choose to follow after it. So yes, I might be biased, English, former English teacher, English PhD student, etc. But yes, I think it is absolutely worth it. It will also supplement and support so many other subjects as well, whether that is other arts and humanities subjects that you might be doing, at high school, or even it might be a nice break from the STEM subjects that you might do as well. I've had medic friends who have done English Lit. It's kind of like a nice break, but it'll also help them to be sort of more well-rounded scholars and thinkers as well. So English, totally worth it. Liam from the future here, editing Liam. I'm aware this video has been very long, but you'll be happy to know that is the Q&A over. That is all the questions I received, and hopefully I've answered them adequately, if not a bit waffly and ramblingly. Apologies for the waffle and the rambling, but that's the beauty of a completely unscripted video from yours truly. That's why I spend so long scripting my videos, so that we avoid this sort of mess with all the videos. As I said earlier, I am so appreciative and so thankful of all of you who have subscribed to my channel up to now. When I made this channel 2 years ago, I didn't think I'd hit 5 subscribers, to be honest. I didn't think anyone would really care enough to subscribe, let alone 5,000 of you. Like 5,000 young people is like more than 150 average sized GCSE classes, which is more than I would have ever been able to have taught personally as a teacher in like my entire teaching career. So it's really mind-blowing how many people I've been able to help out, even if that's just like a little bit. I feel so lucky and so privileged to be able to help so many of you with your studies, whether that is just like that one quotation that's going to give you like that little boost, or that like little piece of contextual information that would have been hard to find otherwise, or even just sort of you find like the way I analyse things to be useful and you've kind of used that as a strategy for your own analysis. I don't know. Thank you all so much. Thank you all to all 5,000 and now more than 5,000 of you. It's a privilege, it's an honour, and I'm so appreciative. Thank you so much. So that is the Q&A over. That is me officially celebrating 5,000 of you wonderful people subscribing to my channel, to all things Dystopia Junkie. And I guess the race is now on to hit 10k. I'll see you soon. Cheers.